Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today I have an awesome guest that I've been excited to talk to for a few weeks now. And her name is Crystal Frasier of Green Ronin Publishing. She's worked on some other amazing books, some of my favorites. And so with that, let's kick it over to Crystal. Feel free to introduce yourself and anything you're currently working on.
Hi, I'm Crystal Frasier. I'm with Green Ronin Publishing. You might recognize me from a bunch of writing for Pathfinder or 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons or oh goodness, what else have I written for? I've done a lot of writing on the side too. You might recognize me from my comics writing for Dynamite Comics.
Nice.
Or if you're really into like niche stage productions, you'll probably recognize me, but I assume not. But yeah, hi, thanks for having me on today.
Thank you. So you are probably the most talked about guest I've even had on here. Like, people I've talked to love you. Like, I've talked to Joseph and Steven and so many people, and they say the greatest things about you. So there's that. And
I didn't come here to be insulted.
No, it's awesome though, and you can tell a lot about someone by how their friends and coworkers and stuff speak of them. So, and everyone speaks highly.
Oh.
So with that, now that we've puffed you up a little bit, one of the things I wanted to mention is it seems like you are one of the lead developers of Mutants and Masterminds. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm the line developer, which means that I basically handle like what tone the books will have, what we're going to publish next, developing all the text manuscripts that we get back from authors. Steve Kenson, the original creator, is still pretty heavily involved, but he's more what we call a developer at large with Green Ronin, which means he jumps between a lot of different systems and projects. So he'll do a lot of writing for Mutants and Masterminds, and I tended to defer to him on like rules questions, or like consider him the series master for Earth Prime. But when it comes to like producing the books that are coming out and deciding what will come out next, that falls on my shoulders.
Right. And you guys do a show on Mondays over on Green Ronin's Facebook page for Mutants and Masterminds, correct?
Oh yeah. We're calling it Mutants and Masterminds Monday. I pushed for Mastermind Monday because it's a little rolls off the tongue a little faster, but
right.
But I guess we won't. Yeah. Branding was more important than being catchy.
So how long have you guys been doing that? Because it's been a short amount of time, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, I want to say we just did our third.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was our fourth, but we just started this as a response to all of us being locked into our homes as part of the pandemic and not really getting to do con appearances and interact with the fans that way. So we wanted some kind of forum, especially with our old forum.
Right. Yeah, that's actually what started me doing this a little more, because it was like, oh, I've got a little bit more time now because my wife's working from home, so she can be inside with the kids, take a little bit of a break from work, and I can do this. So that's kind of cool. Now, on that show, what kind of things do you guys talk about?
Oh, we mostly talk about whatever. We dedicate about half our runtime to questions from the audience, and the other half is kind of related to whatever's coming out that week or what's recently come out. Like, we're mostly talking about the adventure Assault on the Nerean Nexus, which is part of the Nether War adventure series we're doing, and the Time Traveler's Codex, which just came out a couple weeks ago.
Nice. Yeah, I caught Monday's episode, and there were some good things in there, even just tips and like talking about your guys' favorite villains to use, which I think was one of the audience questions. And and I had this talk with some people the other day that I'm friends with about sometimes a supers game, like, or even modern setting games, it almost feels overwhelming to some of us to run it. To play it's different, but to run it, because the possibilities are so endless. Like, you have some characters who can travel around the world in a couple seconds, so it's just such a wide scope. But I feel like some things in your show you guys have talked about can kind of help people if they're looking to run a superheroes game or a Mutants and Masterminds game. So speaking of Mutants and Masterminds, was that your first line that you worked on for Green Ronin?
No, actually. I came onto Green Ronin because I had specifically emailed Chris Pramus, the owner, well, one of the three owners, when they announced second edition Blue Rose a few years ago,
Oh yeah,
because the first edition of Blue Rose made a big point of trying to be queer friendly
yeah,
and basically mentioned again and again it's okay to be gay. We assume just about everybody in the world is bisexual, but it made only one reference to being transgender, which was in a spell about shaping flesh,
mm,
changing the way people look, which is a power that was always inherently corrupting. And it mentioned, oh, does a transgender character risk using this power and corrupting themselves to make a body that's more in line with who they feel they are?
mhm.
And like, if you zoom out and that's the only information you have on transgender people in this world, it looks a lot like it's okay to be gay, but you're corrupt if you're transgender.
Right. Like you're trying to physically alter yourself. It's wrong. It's
Yeah, and
vain or
it
something.
was it wasn't the intention. It was obviously not what they
Right.
were shooting for, but that was the unintentional message. And so when they announced the second edition, I emailed them to say, hey, I don't think you realize this, but in your first edition of the book, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And they immediately responded, not just with, oh God, thank you for letting us know. They asked me to write 2,000 words on how gender works in their world.
That's cool. That's awesome. That probably would have went a long way back in the day with like a sensitivity reading from a transgendered person's point of view.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, back at the time, they had, several queer game designers working on the book. And
yeah.
I mean, up until 2012, 2014, most people weren't thinking about trans issues.
Right. Yep, that's true. I mean, even I've never really thought of it to be honest, as a
Mhm.
straight white male from the suburbs, like that just doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah, I
As an
mean,
adult, I've made a lot of friends who are gay, bi, trans. I've used to run D&D games for two trans people in one of my games, and
mhm,
you never would have known it. They played just like everybody else, right? And
yeah,
they're something to this day. I'm still really good friends with one of them. We talk on Facebook, and we get a little political here and there. Luckily, we agree on a lot of stuff. We just don't agree on how to handle it. Um,
yeah.
but uh, but yeah, no, it's I think it's an important thing in gaming in general. And speaking of which, I believe you introduced the first trans character into Pathfinder, correct?
Oh, yes. I mean, I introduced the first openly trans character in an adventure path, which was Rexus, and I can't remember his last name, but he was a trans man in the. Oh, I'm completely blanking on the adventure path name. Uh, it's set in the city of Kintargo, and you're freeing it from rule by devil worshipping elites.
Oh wow.
And he is basically the person who gathers you all together as a group of heroes to help him figure out what happened to his parents,
Oh
and
okay.
that kicks off the whole adventure path.
Nice.
And then a couple of months after that, they asked me to write the first transgender iconic character, which for Pathfinder, the iconics are the illustrations that go with each class description
Yeah.
that kind of give a face to what that class is and does. And
And that
they,
character is really cool. Like I've seen artwork for that character. It's got like I don't even remember the animal companion, but it's got a smaller one that kind of drapes over its shoulders. And it's got like a
yeah,
larger
she's got like
mouth
a
or
little
something.
bearded dragon that drapes
Yeah.
over her shoulders. But her name was Shardra, and they invited me in into the publisher's office and said, we really you've been pushing hard to include more trans characters in Pathfinder. We've got this new core book coming out introducing 6 new iconics. We've got this swashbuckler who is kind of androgynous and a half elf, and would you like to make one of our iconics transgender? And I said, yes, I want the dwarf.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, it's a cool character. Like the miniature I've seen for it is really cool too.
Yeah,
Um,
I love her.
in pushing for, because obviously you're very big on trans advocacy. You host a panel every year at Gen Con with a couple other people. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, Queer's a Three-Sided Die is. I'm lucky enough to be a guest on it. It wasn't my baby.
Oh,
That's
okay.
mostly the product of I want to say Wes Schneider, Jeremy Crawford, and Steve Kenson and Joe. I just call him Joe all the time. I don't remember his last name.
Carricker?
I'm terrible at choking like
Is
this.
it Joseph Carricker?
Yes, Joseph Carricker. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm bad at remembering things on camera. The second the camera goes off, I'm fine.
That's okay. We can always talk after the camera too.
But yeah, I've been lucky enough to be a guest on it several times, and it's I mean the general consent is just that for so long, I mean, it wasn't overtly stated that queer representation, queer designers weren't welcome in the industry, but there was a lot of this sense of you had to be quiet and unobtrusive and not make yourself noticed.
Right. It was kind of like try to fly under the radar, just do your job kind of thing.
And it's, I mean, it just mirrors what we already have in society. So it's hardly the fault of the industry. It's in every industry.
Right. Look, I mean, luckily we're in a pretty, at least I feel like it's a pretty accepting community. That doesn't mean we don't have our bad apples. But we have a really great community that seems really open and supportive of people from all sorts of things like that. I just wish game design and things like that kind of reflected it a little more because...
Yeah, and it's getting better. I think...
It is.
Like you said, it's just... You never thought about it before a couple of years ago, so most other people haven't either, unless it's something that directly affects their lives, unless they're gay or transgender or have a gay or transgender family member.
Right. Yeah, my wife is very like feminist, like women, girl power kind of thing. And our first child was a girl. So my oldest is a daughter. And I didn't even think about female representation in things until I had her. You know what I mean? And so like, I'm a big like pro wrestling fan. And, you know, I used to watch it hardcore, like multiple nights a week. And so then she would then be like, oh, I like wrestling. And she'd always want to watch the girls. And earlier on, when she was younger, the girl wrestling was just, you know, it wasn't good, right?
Kind of,
it also wasn't something you really wanted little girls to see and stuff like that. But she always latched onto it. And so then I noticed, like, she'd be excited about something, and she'd pretend like her boy toys are girls sometimes. I was like, oh, okay. And by boy toys, I mean, like, boy characters, not, like, blue toys or whatever the crap.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it wasn't until I started seeing that, and I'm like, wow, my 3-year-old daughter is seeking female, like, role models in media, you know, and I never realized how important that was. So, and I'm sure and I know it's the same way for minorities and, you know, LGBTQ, and so yeah, it's an important thing. Have you seen that most game companies seem receptive to your input on that, or is there still kind of a, well, we don't know if we want that in this game line kind of thing?
A lot of them tend to be very receptive for, I mean, it tends to be the bigger the company, the more hesitant they are about being overt with anything queer, but they're happy to sprinkle in as much queer coding as they can get away with.
Yeah.
And smaller companies either tend to be super okay with it or super not okay with it.
Right.
And there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground.
Right. That makes sense. And it probably reflects some of what they're comfortable with too. So, okay.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to bigger companies, then you have to answer to, in some cases, shareholders. In other cases, you have to answer to larger organizations that own them.
Right. Sponsorships or whatever. Yep. So you worked on one of my absolute favorite books, and that was the Inner Sea World Guide by Paizo. Like, that is probably my favorite setting book ever. Can you talk a little bit about what you did with that? Because I haven't heard the story.
That's the
setting book for Galarian.
Yeah, the revised hardback, like supersized one.
I don't know if it's the revised one. I got it right here. Mine's falling apart because I've opened it so much, but this one.
So yes, that's the revised edition. The original edition I didn't work on. It was before my time at Paizo.
Yeah.
My time when that was in production, I was actually in the art department. I can't remember if I was writing for them yet. They hadn't realized I was also a professional writer when they hired me to the art department. But my work in that is mostly on the maps. I would do touch-ups where we needed them. I I'm the one who turned the giant, like 8-foot tall map that we ordered of all of the inner sea region into individual maps for each country and tagged everything. I don't think I really participated much in what's inside, but I did spend a lot of my tenure as a developer trying to correct some of the problematic things that made it inside.
Nice. Yeah, I think like my favorite, I love the art in it and the maps, they're good. I like the layout of it a lot, you know, like how they organized stuff. So, and I think that's to me what resonates with that book. So back to Green Ronin, or Green Ronin as I always slip up and call it. So you have worked on pretty much all their game lines, right? From Dragon Age, Fantasy Age, Blue Rose.
Not Dragon Age,
Oh, you
but
didn't work on that
yeah.
one? Okay.
Fantasy Age, Blue Rose, Modern Age. I didn't work on Orc.
Okay.
And then Mutants and Masterminds.
Gotcha. And what's your favorite to work on, or that you've, you know, you really just enjoy it? It's like a passion project. Sorry. I do that sometimes.
No, because I mean, I like different things for different reasons. I guess Mutants and Masterminds is my favorite because that's the line I'm developing. That's the one I get to put my own personal stamp on. It's the one I've been playing the longest. I was a fan of Mutants and Masterminds years before I ever started writing for them. I got involved back in first edition, like playing in ongoing games with some friends, and I am doing my best to sneak in characters from those games.
That's probably, I was mentioning this on Twitter the other day. I feel like one of the coolest things you can do working for a game line is input your own characters or your gaming group's characters into the setting and make it canon.
Yep. We call it developer's prerogative.
Right. I love it.
I mean, when you get right down to it, every game book ever is somebody's home campaign.
Right.
Pathfinder is basically James Jacobs's home campaign from high school and college.
That's a fun game.
Yeah, he's a good GM. I've played with him.
So are superhero games like your what actually, let's take this back. What is it what got you into tabletop RPGs?
I got into tabletop RPGs because I am a giant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan.
Yes.
And
Eastman has some great stuff. Yeah.
So I still have my very first RPG, which was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness.
Yeah. That was my second book that I ever owned.
Nice. It's just about everybody's first or second book I've discovered.
Yeah. Yeah. Heroes Unlimited was my first, the blue cover one, the revised version. This is in 97. I had a neighborhood friend. He was older. He was 26. I was 12. But he was friends with my uncle and my mom. And he lived like right across the apartment complex. And so me and another kid started making Heroes Unlimited characters. But then he threw us into Rifts. And I was like, I don't want to play Rifts. I want to play superheroes. But he gave me his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book after my mom bought me the blue cover Heroes Unlimited book. So.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good system for creating animals and humanoid animals for sure.
Yeah, and I've been a fan of the Mirage comics and then the animated series and the Archie comics because I was the right age for the animated series and the Archie comics, and I was reading the Mirage stuff way too young. And then I just saw a mention or an ad for Ninja Turtles in a catalog, and I thought, it's a game you can play, but you make up your own stories? How does that even work?
Right.
So I ordered it having no idea what to expect, and I'd never heard of role-playing games. And it came in, I didn't have dice for it, so my brother and I played using brown paper lunch bags with numbered, like we use scraps of paper with numbers written on them. What are those
called? They call that something like chits or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they, like people use that in prison and stuff to play role-playing games or any other dice-type games. That's funny.
Yeah. For like my first couple months of role-playing, I didn't even know where to buy the fancy dice, so we just used chits in a bag and made characters and had really straightforward, boring adventures in retrospect because the Game Master section for this book is 2 pages long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's older, even older games. It doesn't seem like they explain it real well. Luckily, new systems and new games do a much better job of dedicating how, like, examples and how you do it. So
Yeah, and then my second game ever was the D&D Black Box starter set,
ooh,
and
cool.
then almost immediately afterwards, Heroes Unlimited,
Yeah,
the blue book.
yep, yep. So with that, what was it that got you into writing? Like, what was your first industry project?
Oh, I did. Back in high school, I was running well, we didn't call them blogs back then, but I ran a blog with all of my house rules on it and like stuff I'd collected for like my home game, and I kept it on the website, and a bunch
Yep.
of stuff I'd made myself, and for Ninja Turtles and Rifts and a bunch of Palladium stuff. And I eventually Palladium started a magazine called The Rifter to publish fan material. And so I worked up the courage and eventually submitted to that. And they liked it, published some of my stuff. And that's when I started writing professionally back in like 1997 or 98.
Oh wow, I didn't realize the Rifter went back that far.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought that was newer because I used to be all over their forums and their chat room, and I struggled to find people to play with. So I would actually play games in the chat rooms that they had on their website, which I think are still there. I think they still have it, and people are still in them. The last I checked, like a year or two ago.
I haven't thought about the Palladium forums in like 10 years.
Yeah, it's okay. Not a lot of people do. That's coming from a Palladium fan, guys. As you can tell, my Savage Riffs.
2 Palladium fans.
Right, 2 Palladium fans.
She says as she waves her, vintage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other strangeness.
Mine's like over there, and I'd have to like crawl around my lighter. I'd grab mine too. Yeah, no, it's funny too because I played Palladium exclusively, nothing else from '97 until 2010, and
wow,
I tried to get into a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that my friends were having in high school, but they had like 12 people that alternated in their group, so they told me they just didn't have room. And it was because like it was a large group as it was, but then they'd bring in their girlfriends or boyfriends because it was a mixed boy-girl group of kids in this one neighborhood. So I never got into that group. And so I kind of gave up on trying to find RPGs after a while because I could not find anyone who wanted to play Palladium. That was my big gripe about Palladium is nobody wanted to play it. And when I met my wife and moved in with her, I had asked her if I could put my gaming books on a shelf somewhere, one of her bookshelves. And she said, yeah, sure, just put them over there. And she didn't know I had gaming books. I just said books. And I saw her D&D books. And we had been dating for 5 months or so. Had no idea that she was into tabletop RPGs. And so then I held my book up and she looked at me like, well, what's that? Like, is that a comic book or something? I was like, no, this is a superhero RPG. I was like, and you have this. And I held it up. And so we started playing shortly after that. And I've become really diehard, like obsessive with RPGs ever since.
Yeah, my wife and I actually met over a game of Munchkin. So right there with you.
There you go. Yeah, my uncle's been trying to get us to play Munchkin at family events for years. And it's kind of been this, I know it's a great game, but it's like this thing where he brings it up and we're like, no. And so now it's just this thing where we just say no matter what. So You've
got to head him off.
I've played
like
it
bust
twice.
out the Munchkin before he says anything and be like, hey, you want to play Munchkin?
Right. We've actually started doing that with other games. Like, hey, do you want to play this? And like before he ever says anything, he's like, no, but I'll play Munchkin. And we're like, no. But we've played some fun ones like what is it? Bears versus Babies and some other kind of goofy games. We played Cards Against Humanity with my mom.
Yeah. Oh, that no.
It was great. My mom's pretty cool. And like, so we played that with her, my grandfather, who's like a diehard conservative Republican. And he was like trying not to laugh, but you could like tell he was laughing because there's, some funny combinations. But anyways, yeah, no, that's cool. So I don't even remember what got me going in that. This is the first time ever on this show that I've kind of went on my...
I have difficulty believing that.
Conversation's so natural with you. So you said you hadn't worked on Dragon Age, but you said you did work on Fantasy Age. What
Yes.
was your role in that? Because that's a game I own and I've never played it, and I'm really anxious to play it someday.
I've done adventure writing for Fantasy Age.
Okay.
The I think the big one I've done hasn't been published yet, so unfortunately you'll have to wait for that. But I mean, other than that, mostly I've given some suggestions on it. Some of the rules I helped develop for Modern Age ended up incorporated into the Fantasy Age companion.
Nice.
So mostly not adversarial, advisory stuff for Fantasy Age as far as rules development.
Gotcha.
Green Ronin is spread all over the country, and we just operate in a Slack channel and like talk out design issues and ask for suggestions. So basically anything that comes to fruition is this, coat of many colors.
Right. That makes sense. You guys have an awesome team over there too. It seems like everyone works well together.
So. I think so. There's a couple of us that like butt heads, but
sure.
Mostly in like a sibling way than an enemy way.
I understand that. I worked at an office once that we had. I worked there for a decade, and I would have people that we'd be in a meeting and shouting at each other, and then 5 minutes later we'd be like happily talking about something else. Like, hey, how's your family? Yeah. I'm not normally a shouter in meetings, just so people know. But we had one manager who was definitely a shouter, and you would have to match him to calm him down. Yeah, he didn't work there at the end though. He ended up going somewhere else. Still good friends with him though. So you said you were an artist too. What does some of your art entail? Like, what do you like?
I've been an illustrator. I started out as a cartoonist doing like comics in my school newspaper or just publishing, goofy things for fun, and spent a few years publishing my own webcomic called Venus Envy, which don't Google it. It's awful.
That just makes me want to Google it more though.
I actually went to art school, God help me, which developed my skills a lot, but I think developed me more as a writer than as an artist.
Okay.
And most of my work is kind of illustrative, cartoony. I don't do realism very well. It just doesn't click in my head.
Sure.
But I illustrated I don't know if you've seen The Secrets of Cats. It's a Fate RPG.
I've seen it talked about before.
Okay. I did the cover illustrations for that, and a lot or most of the interior illustrations.
Okay.
And
Nice.
I've done commissions for people's characters. I've illustrated my own products. Works fairly well for superhero-based RPGs because my style's kind of comic booky, but these days, the last 3-4 years, everybody's been wanting me for writing, so I haven't gotten to draw very much.
So if you're out there and you need work done, ask her for art.
I don't have time.
Yeah, that's understandable. So what is do you like working with established IPs, or would you rather work on something that's not? And by that I mean like movies or shows or anything like that.
I mean, I like working within like worlds other people have created and working off of them. I've said before that limits are fertilizer for creativity. Like knowing what your boundaries are and how to work within it. It's like having a pole for a beam to climb.
Yeah. It like forces the focus rather than having this like huge broad spectrum. It's like, oh shoot. It like forces you to dial it in. That makes sense.
That said, I love working within my own worlds too, but
sure.
I love working on team projects. Like I cannot come up with every idea on my own, so it's great to be able to bounce ideas off other people and help them develop ideas they're working on.
Right.
So I think sorry.
Oh no, you're okay. You're good. You go ahead.
Oh, was just gonna say I think I do my best work when I have other people there to help me refine my ideas, and I feel like I'm a lot more excited about projects when other people are excited too.
Yes, I'm 100% like that. I like to feed off of other people. like it's hard. I've run campaigns like D&D campaigns and stuff for people, or Heroes games, and like I feel like if they aren't high energy or excited about it, I definitely feel my interest wane a little bit. So I get that. Or same thing working on projects myself, because I actually have a friend. I've been editing he's working on his own setting, heavily inspired by Fantasy Flight Genesis system, and so I'm editing his, and it's cool because he's so passionate about it, and like because he is, it got me working on my own thing just for the hell of it. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm just gonna write my own thing. I'm like 60 pages in, and I'm having fun with it, but it's crap, but it's fun.
I mean, you can always edit crap.
Right. I think my problem is it's unlike it's kind of like what we were talking about. It's not focused. It's like I started with a focus, and then I was like, oh, but this would be a cool idea, even though it has nothing to do with what I've already got. And oh, this would be a cool idea. So I kind of like thrown other like mechanic ideas into this thing that don't really relate. So
well, I mean, that's what first drafts are for.
Right. And then you take the good and get rid of the bad. So yeah, I started doing that, and it's been fun. But so with that, you said you like working on your own world. Have you ever published your own setting?
Geez, have I? I don't think I have.
So when
I've developed...
can we see that? No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I've got half a dozen easily tucked away on my computer that I've kind of been tinkering with. Every year I come home from Gen Con with ideas I want to develop that, end up as 5 or 10 pages of notes and then kind of get put in my documents folder and I forget about them.
Yep, I get that.
So I don't know. It's going to depend on life being regular enough that I can schedule time to work on my own stuff every day, where I don't need to fill every free moment with freelance to make ends meet, and work isn't so draining that I finish the day and just can't do anything.
Right. How long have you been full-time in the RPG industry?
I guess about 10 to 12 years now.
That's a good run.
Yeah,
it's a hard industry to crack into full-time, it seems.
It really is, and I ended up in it mostly by accident. So.
Which seems like a reoccurring theme with people I talk to. Like, I talked to Louis Loza like the other day, and he's like, yeah, I just did like a forum thing that like competition, and I was one of the 5 finalists, and since then I've just been doing stuff. And like, I was like, yeah, that sounds right. And like, who was it? I think it was Joseph had a very similar story where he kind of like stumbled into it with Onyx Path, and just it's so funny to me. Because then I have like other friends who are like, I really want to get into the RPG industry, and they're like writing constantly, and they're like, yeah, I sent this to like Palladium for a Rifter, or I sent this here, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll keep working at it.
I think the secret is just write your own stuff, make it available either through self-publishing or a blog, or places people can find it, and then be involved in the community and don't be an asshole.
Right.
I mean, everybody likes to think
easy.
Flick. I mean, a lot of it comes down to like finding a good group of people and networking. So like there used to be a group of Paizo fans called the Were Cabbages, and it was people like Liz Quartz, Adam Daigle, Clinton Boomer, who are all names you probably recognize from the Pathfinder professionally these days.
Yeah.
And the secret was just like they worked together, they helped each other develop their stuff, and then once one of them started getting hired for freelance work, they could go to their editor and say, well, I can't take this project, but I know this really great this really great writer I work with sometimes over here who would be perfect for the project.
It's kind of like the music industry is like that, where it's one person gets their big break, and then they're like, hey, I really want to put this person on, and it kind of works that way. That's cool. Yeah, it sounds really easy, to do it, and obviously.
Oh no, there's a lot of luck.
Yeah, and like obviously, you said, you can self-publish, and part of it seems like in the industry that if you start writing your own thing, say it's on Drive-Thru RPG, and you start building up a following, that too might interest certain companies. they'll be like, oh, well, they, we can expect them to bring some of their following to us or whatever. It seems like that's part of it as well. Not maybe a small part, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it definitely helps when you go to a developer or an editor and say, I want to work for you. And they say, well, can you send me a sample of your work? Being able to send them like something that's shiny and polished and looks really impressive on top of being well written.
Right. Yep. And now it's easier than ever to put your own stuff out there.
Yeah, you can self-publish with a copy of Word.
Yep. That's perfect. So what are some, sorry, I remember what I was going to ask earlier. What are some intellectual properties you would like to work on that aren't currently owned by any RPG companies that you know of?
Well, I mean, the one I keep pushing at Green Ronin so hard it's become a recurring joke is, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It is not
if you
currently...
get that, I'm jumping in on it. I'm coming in and I'm buying all the books and I'll run a streamed game and everything.
But yeah, I've actually got fan house rules for modern age for running with Ninja Turtles that I don't think I'm allowed to publish, but I've got them tucked away for my own use.
Couldn't you do it on a blog though if it's not for money? Or is that against the rules?
I don't know. I'm trying not to be a jerk, so
right. Chris, get on that.
But I mean, that would be my ideal project. I would love to write the comics. I would love to write an RPG adaptation. I'd love to work on a video game. I'd love to work on a Ninja Turtles cartoon.
That's interesting. You would latch it onto modern age instead of Mutants and Masterminds too.
I love Mutants and Masterminds, but it
seems more fitting for modern age.
It does. Yeah. Mutants and Masterminds is very much like high action adventure.
Yeah.
Like high-powered, huge variety of abilities, whereas the Ninja Turtle comics, are the Mirage and the IDW license especially, tend to be very, very grounded, very human stories, low power, like, and wacky off-the-wall combat.
Sure.
I like the weird things the turtles do with their surroundings just tends to be, I think, something that fits that stunt system better.
Right. It makes sense. I get it. Initial thought was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are superheroes, though. So that was the only reason I was like, what? But no, it makes perfect sense.
That said, I did do a Ninja Turtles homage in the Super Team Handbook.
Nice.
They're just past, I believe they're just past the Power Rangers homage.
Nice.
But here we go. The Shadow Knights.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
They are mutant rabbits who fight the Chinese Tong and also magical aliens.
That is very Ninja Turtle-esque.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles are basically hard, gritty urban stories with an injection of high weirdness.
Speaking of which, is that white thing on your shelf behind you, is that the that's from Ninja Turtles, isn't it?
Yes, that is the Technodrome.
That's what it was called. I couldn't remember the name.
So I collect Ninja Turtles, Legos, and Mega Bloks, among other things. Nice. And so I've got most of the Mega Bloks Ninja Turtles run, aside from the little blind bag figurines. Yeah. I've got the sewer layer just over there on the other side of my desk.
The old toy from like the early 90s? The sewer layer?
No. Oh. I wish I still had my Technodrome. I had it at one point when I was like, we grew up poor, so like a $40 vehicle for Ninja Turtles was like so over the top and extreme, and I saved for months.
I had color forms. All my friends had the Ninja Turtle toys, even the like the pizza shooter thing, and I had the color forms. so I'd be like, well, I'm playing with my color forms. I'm okay.
But yeah, no, I had the Technodrome at one point and bought it with my own money. And I have no idea what happened to it. I obviously left it at home when I left for college. And my parents probably sold it at a garage sale.
For pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that.
Yeah, it's a toy that a child had lovingly played with for years. So it's not like it was, primo quality.
Having kids is a fantastic excuse for me to sometimes play with toys. I'm just saying. It's amazing.
I've got a niece and nephew, and they're adorable, and I get to go over and play Legos with them.
That's perfect.
I mean, not that I need an excuse, obviously.
Right. So we do have a question. You don't have to answer it though. If you're uncomfortable with it, just let me know. So the question is, I was wondering what happened at Paizo. It seems that most of the names I knew left just before the announcement of Pathfinder 2. Wes, for example, what caused the exodus? If you don't know, you can say you don't know, or if you're not comfortable.
I mean, I know, but it's something I'd rather not get into because I'm worried my answer will hurt people that I still really love at Paizo.
Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And then he says micro machines. Yeah, micro machines were pretty cool too.
No, Battle Beasts. Battle Beasts are where it's at, man.
Oh man, I grew up on GI Joes, and like we used to do the flag points. My mom used to cut. Yeah, on the back of the package they had flags with a number over it. It would say like GI Joe, but it was a U.S. flag, and it would have like a 1 or whatever. I don't remember them that well, but I would come home from school sometimes, and my mom had saved up a bunch, and she would send them in, and if you had enough, they sent you free stuff. So I got like this whole like battlefield set that had like barbed wire and turret guns and all this stuff, and I came home and she had set it up all on the table. And I remember walking in and I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. My mom was awesome when I was
Did she let you play with it?
Oh yeah. Except the problem is after that first time, I would beg my parents to help me set up my G.I. Joes because I was young and I couldn't set it up to look cool. I could never get them to set it up for me. They'd be like, I'll do it later. And they never did. So plus I ended up a couple years later, my little sister started growing up and she got more attention, you know. So
yeah, I know. As an older sibling, I understand.
Right? We're like the favorite, but we're not the favorite.
Yeah, you're definitely not. You're the one held to the highest standard.
That's true. That is true.
And then you're the one who's expected to just get along on your own.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at that though.
Yeah, I mean, are you or are you by necessity?
It's probably that one. Plus, my wife is pretty good about that. She was the baby in her family. So it's like I was the firstborn. She's the lastborn of like 8. So it's a completely different thing. Like all her siblings kind of not resent her, but they joke that she was the favorite because she got to go on cruises because her parents were of retirement age almost. Or actually now they're in their 80s. So yeah, they were around like 50 something when she was younger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So she used to get to go on cruises and stuff, and they always resented her for it. But on the cruises, she was in daycare. It's not like she was out doing the fun stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Ninja Turtles are pretty cool. So what is your favorite character from that?
Oh, I mean, from the core 4, probably Leonardo.
Interesting.
You know, being the older sister and the one who always has to be responsible, I can really identify with all that. Like all the pressure to try and be the one who upholds the tradition and the one who keeps everybody else in line.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's Michelangelo. But I'm kind of a goofy person, so.
Yeah, Michelangelo is a hard second for me. And I mean, I love Donatello and Raphael. It's not like I have a hated turtle among the 5 or the 4 or the 5 now.
Maya what's her name?
Jenica.
Oh, that's the new one. There was another one though. There was Maya D'Angelo or something like that, or Venus de Milo. Yeah, so being the older brother, my sister being 5 years younger than me, I always tried to get her into things I was into. And I remember when that series started, I was like, hey, Rachel, there's a girl turtle now. And like I bought her the action figure for her birthday.
Aww.
And everything. Was trying so hard to get her into Ninja Turtles back then. Because that had to be around like 98 or something. But yeah, I was working at the time for my dad. And I was like, here's a Ninja Turtle. She didn't take to it.
Oh, no.
And everyone hated that turtle. And I still to this day don't get the hate.
I mean, I understand where it came from. She was just good at everything and everyone loved her. It was the Poochie effect.
Yeah.
I to this day will defend that the idea of a 5th turtle is a good one, and Venus would have been a great character if they had not tried so incredibly hard to make her cool and hip and 90s.
Yeah. It was forced a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, and I still like her. I still like I think Jenica is a great addition if you're reading the comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that they had come out with another female recently, and it seemed better received. But I don't read the comics, unfortunately.
Yeah. Highly recommend if you have the time.
Oh, and I should. Is it like original comics, not kid friendly, or are these ones more kid friendly?
They're a little more kid friendly than the Mirage comics, but they're definitely more mature than the Archie comics. Sure. I mean, there's death and there's injury, and
my daughter's hitting 9 years old and she enjoys comic books. But
okay,
we also are a little bit less censored in our house. Like we're very we have very real conversations with them.
Yeah, I would read ahead and just, see what's in there, but it sounds like she'd be about the right age to start getting into it.
Yeah. So Dice Ogre said, what are some games you see shaping the next wave of tabletop RPGs?
Oof. You cannot deny Powered by the Apocalypse is having a big impact in terms of narrative versus crunch. Yeah. A lot of the newer games coming out are very narrative focused, which I think is good. I'm a story person. I like more crunch, I guess, than most of the
fan.
Yeah, I'm a Palladium fan. That's what I cut my teeth on. But it is nice to see narrative becoming a little more important. It's not just raw rules. Right. That determine success or failure or how a campaign goes. There's a lot more talk, even in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, about hey, it's okay to hand wave dice results or change how you think a campaign's going to develop based on your players' interests, your players' feedback, or your players achieving major goals that upset the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. When I switched from when I started playing 5th edition D&D, it was really refreshing to have a system that I didn't need to look up rules for everything.
Yes.
And I came from trying Pathfinder for a while before that. I spent $600 on books before I had even run a game. Yeah, I was like, all right, this is going to be it. It's the best thing out there. Because I had actually, the first one I had seen was the Game Mastery Guide.
Okay, Paizo. That's a pretty solid one.
And I loved it. I was like, you know what? This is something I can use for non-Pathfinder. And I do. I use it for D&D still to this day sometimes.
There's a lot of great advice in there.
Yeah, and the tables. I love tables.
Yes.
It's so great. And yeah, so anyway, so I had done that, and I started running solo games for my wife. Mm-hmm. And we did a handful, not even a handful, we did 2 or 3. And then we got a group together in 2014 before 5e came out. And then when 5e came out, everyone was like, well, this game's so much easier. And we don't, we noticed with Pathfinder, we got to look up rules all the time. Let's try 5e. And I was like, all right. So we got into it and never looked back. And so I had all these Pathfinder books for the longest time. I sold some of them because I knew I would never use them again. But yeah, so it's been refreshing. However, I feel like the lack of customization at this point is all right, as a player, 5e doesn't do it for me. So I've been reaching for other games that might satisfy that.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. Like you said, I love 5e for how easy it is to jump into, and I love that it's vague enough that I can fill in a lot of the cracks with whatever my personal flavor is. I built a princess just using the Bard class. And it's basically the idea of she's very inspirational, she's very generous, she's very outgoing, and most of her spells are just her castigating people or being incredibly witty or things like that. Basically,
she's a princess of the people.
She is. She's an adventuring princess who was kidnapped and is also a kobold.
Oh, she's a kobold?
She's a kobold.
Oh, that's great.
She was kidnapped from one of these sophisticated kobold kingdoms deep beneath the earth and brought to this primitive, barbaric world where the sun shines overhead, but only for half the day. And she's trying to get back home, but at the same time, she's trying to help these poor, backwards, lost people, install centralized sewage systems or develop civic infrastructure or, crop rotation.
Sounds like Bill Gates as a kobold.
I like to think she was a little more likable than that.
That's probably true, right? Dice Ogre says, Gnomes of Galarian is my favorite Pathfinder book, hands down. Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, thanks.
Victor Snyder, I agree as a DM in asking the other members of the group, what does your players want for their player character? I do my best to have that happen.
Yes.
I have tried playing a bard as a trader from a wealthy family. Okay.
Okay, nice.
We're almost out of time. Is there anything else you want to discuss that you can think of before we go off air?
Well, I mean, I definitely want to plug Assault on the Nerean Nexus.
Yes.
I think it's a new adventure for Mutants and Masterminds, just released 2 days ago, and it's, you know, this big, exciting, like, free for all run on basically the Sanctum Sanctorum after Adrian Eldritch, who's our Sorcerer Supreme of Earth Prime, dies. And the heroes have to stop a bunch of villains from looting his house and making off with all of these, like, world-ending magical artifacts.
Oh, man. It sounds awesome. It sounds very
so.
based in reality for what happens when world leaders disappear.
But yeah, and it's part of our Nether War adventure series, which is a 5-part or 6-part, if you count the prequel, just run of adventures that all tie together and build to a big, like, cosmological crossover save the world event.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really awesome. Yeah, so definitely, guys, go check those out. The one they were talking about on Monday, it sounded like they had so much good stuff for this book. They unfortunately had to cut stuff out that it was really good. Crystal said she struggled with it, having to cut.
Yeah, we had to. I unfortunately had to cut 2 things out that were a lot of fun, but didn't fit into the flow of the adventure, and those are both going to be blogs over the next week.
There you go. So if there's any question about the quality of content in there, there shouldn't be. Clearly, it's packed of awesome material. So
yep, it's written by John Polojic, who is one of our longest Mutants and Masterminds writers, really talented, filled with just tons of wahoo, over-the-top, cool ideas.
Yes, and he was on the show on Monday, which you can go see over on the Facebook page for Green Ronin Publishing. So go check that out for sure. And yeah, the other thing I was going to say, and John was on as their guest this week too. So John, Steve, and Crystal were all on it, and somebody else, Travis, I think is his name.
Troy.
I always mix up names. I'm so bad.
Troy handles our licensing and our social media.
Yeah. I think I've talked to him through email a few times too. So
very likely.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, you can follow Crystal on Twitter over at Amazon Chic or Chick. I don't
Chic. CHIQUE.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be in the description below, as well as the link to the Green Ronin Facebook page. And I will actually get a link to the products that she mentioned from her off air, and I'll post those down below as well. So thank you, Crystal, for your time. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are an awesome guest. I could talk to you probably for hours.
Thank you.
So with that, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button if it's your first time here, and leave us a like. And we will be back next week with 2 other guests. Right now, they are. Let me pull it up. Next week we are speaking with Cypher First Class. That's his Twitter handle, and we will be talking to some people from RPG Academy. So we air live every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. And we also we stream a few games here. So if that all sounds good, again, smash that subscribe button. Thank you, guys, and thank you again, Crystal. Till next time.
Yeah.
Game on.
Well,